Namaste. This is Yoga Therapy Podcast, and I'm your host, Shira Cohen, yoga teacher, yoga therapist, and Ayurvedic wellness educator. In these conversations with experts in the field of yoga therapy, you'll find out what it is and how it can help you and your loved ones to reclaim well-being. We'll touch on physical as well as mental health, physiology, emotions, women's health, spiritual well-being, goddesses, and self-development in the fullest sense. Listening to another story can change ours, so thank you for showing up, and let's begin this journey together. Okay, hey, this is so funny because I am in Sicily right now on holiday for a week. I'm coming to the end of my week, and I am here now today with Keri Marino, and she just told me her name is Sicilian, so it's wonderful to have Keri here. Welcome, Keri.
Thank you. It's so good to be here with you today.
Yeah, we're just getting to know each other a little. So Keri is a certified yoga therapist, a spiritual life coach, and a speaker. And we're going to talk about mental health, unapologetic storytelling, and sharing our journey in life as it really is. So thank you for being here, and it's wonderful to get to know you.
Yes, likewise. I always love to connect with other people who are walking that path of realness and vulnerability.
Yes. So let's start with your story. Tell us, how did you get to yoga? And when did it become yoga therapy, or was that a very clear choice earlier?
Yeah. So I actually came to yoga when I was 19 years old. My life was really, as we say here in the South, a hot mess. I had low back pain that was chronic and very debilitating. I was really entrenched in eating disorders, and I was just suffering. I was not happy. Life was not going well. And I found myself in a breakdown. I was at my mom's for a summer to have surgery and on pain medication for an entire summer, which is crazy for a 19-year-old.
Wow, yes.
But I went to a bookstore and picked up a chanting CD and a meditation CD about emotional freedom. And I took those home. And so that's actually how I started yoga, was through chanting and meditation, which is kind of unusual. Yes. People usually start with asana.
Yes.
But I found it to be really powerful for me. And then I had that surgery. I really had this situation where I was moving into a new home and I was going to be alone. And I realized I have got to either change my life or I am going to sink here by myself where nobody can see me. So I made the decision to recover from eating disorder. And I also went out and bought a yoga DVD with Rodney Yee. I don't know if you've heard of.
Yes, I've got one of his books. I haven't ever done a class with him.
Yeah, I started with a Rodney Yee DVD. And to be honest, it sucked. It felt awful in my body.
I'm sure he won't be happy if he hears that. But
his yoga was great, but it felt terrible in my body. Like I had so much tension and just like my body was just locked up. But I knew somewhere inside of me, I was like, this is good for me and I want to do this. And I was recovering from eating disorder, which was hard. And so I knew like I really needed other things to put my energy in, and yoga was one of the ones that I took. So that led me to this place where I just radically changed my life. I cut friendships out. I changed my major and moved to a different state. And started at a new college. And when I started at that new college, I felt brave enough to go take a yoga class, which was a really big deal for me, being able to walk into a room. But go ahead.
Ask, what was the eating disorder, if that's all right to ask?
Yes. So I actually have had them all. And I don't say that to minimize any of them. Like I began my journey with anorexia, that led me to bulimia, and then that led to binge eating disorder. And then eventually that led to what's called orthorexia, which is basically like obsessively eating clean. So you're still eating regularly, but you won't allow yourself anything that's not clean. And then there's the compulsive exercise that goes along with it. So that was my trajectory through. And part of my healing was like coming through the orthorexia and then realizing finally, like, wait a minute, this is actually still eating disorder behavior. I can let this go too.
So it was really becoming conscious that helped you to transform that?
It did. I think establishing a different relationship with myself, because my relationship up until that point had been very socially driven. Like, who am I dating? Who am I hanging out with? What are we doing? And then I worked a whole lot. And that was kind of my relationship with myself. There wasn't a lot of self-reflection or self-awareness. And when I introduced the yoga piece and I had that breakdown, I was like, gosh, this isn't working. I don't want to live like this anymore.
And you were only 19.
I was. I really think that my spiritual path saved my life. I don't know what route my life would have taken had I not said yes to that, but I don't think it would have been a path that I have any interest in participating in at all.
Yeah, I also had anorexia. I started with bulimia and felt guilty for the vomiting, and then I just stopped eating, would not eat for 3 weeks, and then binge, and then again not eat. But it was also yoga that helped me to build up a conscious relationship to eating and to myself.
Absolutely. And just, I think one of the number one things that yoga taught me is that I have a choice. And that sounds so simple. Like, I have a choice what I do. I have a choice how I relate to myself and my body. But for me, that was really radical because I didn't really recognize that until that point in my life.
Oh, that's important. I've never heard that or never thought of it like that. But yes, we've got many choices. We've got too many choices, maybe. Yes.
We do. And I think we just get so ingrained in like, this is how I do it. This is how it is. This is how I do it. This is how it is. That it really does take sometimes a different perspective layered in for you to say, well, why am I doing it that way? Do I want to do it that way? Oh, I have other choices. Okay, what are those?
So, and it went quite naturally. It was easy. There was hard steps. How was that process?
Recovering from eating disorders? It was hard. I think part of why it was so hard is because I was really good at hiding and nobody actually knew what I was going through. So I was recovering alone in the privacy of my 1-bedroom apartment. So it was a real like
confrontation.
Yeah, it was a real confrontation with myself. And every time I went to the grocery store and every time I prepared a meal, it was this like that idea of confronting your darkness and being like, I can make this choice, but I'm not going to. I'm going to make this choice. And then there would be parts of me that was like, nope, reroute and go back to your old way of eating disorder behavior. And I would have to have this confrontation so many times over and over again of, no, I'm choosing this. I'm choosing this. I'm choosing this. And then over time, it did get easier because that became my new normal, not to engage in that behavior. But I think the part of all the self-development and self-realization that I was doing in yoga, and even going, when I switched majors, I went to school for nutrition. So I was like, I want to learn how people have a healthy relationship with food because I don't even know what that looks like for me. All of that helped because I was building new skills at the same time that I was dismantling my patterns that weren't serving me.
Okay. And how big do you think control is a part of that? Did you feel, because I know it is, having some control in your life and then all of a sudden realizing you have choice and control in those choices even?
I think the piece of awareness and autonomy is really empowering with eating disorders. But truthfully, one of the most important tools for me in recovering for eating disorder was not control. It was actually being able to sit with my discomfort and feel my emotions and speak my truths. That honestly was really why I felt like, because I began my eating disorder behavior at a very young age. I was 8 years old when I started to go on my first diet. I didn't become anorexic until much later.
Okay, yes. I had the same.
But that came at a time when my parents were divorcing. There was a lot of trauma. And I think that the weight of all of the stress and trauma and overwhelm and not having good healthy outlets for my emotions or awareness for them led me down that path of eating disorders. So that part of like reclaiming gave me control, because then I could say
that's what
this is what I feel.
Yeah.
And I'm going to feel it.
Yeah.
I don't need to numb it out with eating disorder behavior.
I think you touched on 2 points very important. Is the reason we turn to, whether it's drugs or sporting or an eating disorder, it's to have some control in your life, because everything else feels uncontrollable and ambivalent. And you said just to sit with your feelings, that had to be a choice, and sit with the uncertainty of whatever arises and be okay with that holding space basically for what's there. and not knowing how it's going to unfold, but allowing that to unfold, to feel the emotions that are underneath that you cannot control. And I think that's a big problem with our society, like you were saying in the beginning, is your whole life, the social aspects. It's all about this outer material world and the things we can control and that we can direct. And we live in this world where everything is about what we look like and prestige and power and money, and not about the inequalities and the uncertainty of those inequalities, because emotion is so important. Emotion is what connects us and makes us feel good and gives us life. And why do you look at a beautiful film or read an amazing book or a beautiful painting or music? It's because you feel. But it's also unpredictable.
Yeah. I think that I love the wheel of emotion. Do you ever reference that in your own practice or your work?
No, I don't know that. Where's that from?
So it's from the psychology realm, but basically it's a whole wheel of emotion. And then the center, there are things like fear and joy. And then outwardly spreading from that are things like, from sadness, there's grief. From joy, there's happiness, like all of these different ways that it expresses itself. And I always say that whole wheel is actually what we're meant to feel.
Yes, it's a universe of feeling.
All of it. Every one of them. And I love how the yoga practice teaches us to be with every part. And I think sometimes we were talking about before we started recording about spiritual bypassing, and it's like, nope, I'm going to use yoga just to make myself feel better because I can do that. That is, so I feel like in the yoga world, there's this common process of bypassing our difficult emotions. And the truth is that those emotions are just as sacred as our ones that are devotional and feel like love, like our fear and our sadness and our grief are equally worthy to our joy. And I think that there's room to feel it all. And I love that yoga gives us this space of awareness and autonomy in our body where we can feel it all and really have the strength and courage to be able to face it.
Yeah. And I think what you said is really important, is the fact that yoga allows you first to feel everything in your body, and therefore it's like a template to also feel everything in your psyche and feel everything in your emotional body and everything in the mind. You start to integrate all those parts because you've become more integral in that first body that you can experience more fully. So, yeah, and I think another important thing is the spiritual bypassing. But I in yoga, I think it's spiritual bypassing, but we're all doing the emotional bypassing in Western culture. And this is one thing that I've been discovering through researching for my book is that there are some cultures like Japanese and African and other Asian countries where they realize that negative emotions are just a natural part of relationships. There's nothing wrong with them. That is what happens when you relate. We can't always have the bliss and devotion. We need those negative emotions. They're just impetuses for change. And being uncomfortable is the push that's going to make us create the changes that we need to create to have better lives, to have better relationships.
I feel like that's such a good view overall, like in our development and growth as a person, that just because we're suffering doesn't mean something's wrong with us. It means that we're growing, we're evolving, we're changing, and we have awareness of it. So rather than like, oh, if this person's having a hard time or what's wrong with them, it's like, no, they're just a human being, and human beings sometimes have hard times, and it's part of life.
And that it's not particularly a step backwards, and that we don't need to look at our trajectory as always linear and upward, that step backwards are necessary. Retreating is a part of growth, and change is not always easy.
And not knowing sometimes. I feel like that's a really hard one for people. Like, I don't know. It's like, well, good.
Be surprised. Yeah. Okay, so let's get back to your journey. How did you end up moving towards yoga therapy? Was that very natural for you?
Yeah, so eventually at that new school, I found my way to my first yoga class, which I was sharing, and it radically changed my life. I had never felt that good as far back as I could ever remember. I felt light, I felt relief, I felt space in my body, I felt ease, I felt calm. And I knew I wanted more. I was like, this feels so good. And so I really dove in and practiced yoga, and knew immediately, like within 2 months, that I wanted to become a yoga teacher. I was like, this is changing my life. My back pain went away. My eating disorders entered to a new stage of recovery and healing, and I was getting free from that. My migraines fell away. Like all these things that were causing me so much suffering, they started to dissipate. And it wasn't like I just woke up and I was like, they're all gone, but it just kind of gradually, piece by piece. So I knew that yoga had immense therapeutic value. And that was really my whole reason for doing it, was like, I needed therapeutic value, and it was giving me that. I never came to it for fitness, which I know a lot of people do, and that's awesome. However we get into is great. I went to yoga school and graduated from my 200 hour, and realized really quickly that the type of students I was attracting were way more complicated than I had the knowledge to help and feel like I was doing it with integrity. So that led me to a yoga therapy program. And then that is where I just felt so at home. I love building relationships with people, and yoga therapy provides that opportunity to really build a strong sense of camaraderie and relationship. And then I could work with all those people who are real people and actually feel like I was serving them and not potentially doing harm because I didn't know enough.
Yeah.
And it was just really always why I was there in the first place. It was like, yoga healed me. Like, what do you need? Yeah. How can I help you? What's going on in your life that you need some of this medicine from?
Yeah. There's so much potential there. And I think the more you study it, the more you realize how much is possible. And the more you have this like drive that you want to give it to others, to understand that you too can feel so much better and feel so much more empowered and have so much more say in how to regulate yourself, but even move beyond that regulation. Yeah. I can never get enough of yoga. So I read something on your website, which I thought was really beautiful. I think one of your blogs, where you said why we're not meant to navigate the complexities of life alone. And I would like you to kind of tell us how important the social support is for physiological, emotional, and psychological co-regulation.
Yeah. So I want to say that first off, most people have a lot of shame. And shame is basically anytime we feel like we're not good enough, or there's something wrong with us, or that we don't belong. And what shame does to people is it makes them hide and draw in. So a lot of times people's natural response to a difficulty, a struggle, or a vulnerability is shame, and they hide it. And the thing about that is that we don't heal shame by hiding it. And we don't heal our vulnerability by like drawing in and pretending it's not there. We have to shine the light on it. We have to show it to somebody. And then hopefully that person we show it to is somebody who has compassion and awareness, and they can hold it with love and be like, you know what, you're okay. Like, you're going to get through this. You're strong, or whatever it is. So I think that like knowing like that's a barrier to people getting the help that they need. And then that if we match ourselves with the right kind of support, because you don't just want to fling the door open to like the asshole around the corner and say like, here's my vulnerability. You want to be intentional about it. But when we're intentional about it, we get to process our story. Our trauma gets integrated. Those emotions that we've not been able to feel come up because we're in this safe container of somebody holding that space with us. We can co-regulate with them. If we have a relationship with a yoga therapist and they're holding a calm, loving space for us, and we feel safe in their presence, that extends over our way. And so I think it's really important, like the one-on-one relationship. If you look into the science, which I'm such a science nerd, the relationship between parties is part of the healing, not just what the work that they're doing. And then in a group, which people are extra unsure about when it comes to like exploring deep vulnerability, there's even more healing potential, because then you have a whole room full of people being real and saying, gosh, I also struggle with my self-worth, or I also struggle with suicidal ideation, or whatever it is. Like, people can normalize it.
Yeah, and the sharing and hearing other people's stories is so important to give insights to your story and see it from a very different perspective as well, with much more acceptance, and it's okay. And I can get out of this too. Yeah.
Yes, this isn't a life sentence for me. This is an experience that I'm having.
Yeah, exactly. It's an event. Yeah. And I think something you said right in the beginning, that's probably a big aspect of why it was so difficult for you to go into that first yoga class, was the shame or the feeling of not fitting in or not belonging. Yeah.
Yeah, I was worried of that I was going to look silly or stupid, which I probably did. And you know what? It's okay.
I do one exercise with people, which makes us all look very, what do you call that? I don't know if that's a politically correct word these days, but kind of retarded, is to try and move all your toes one by one. And then you realize you're trying to move them through your fingers. And I always make fun of myself that it's still hard for me, because we don't use the wiring from our brain to our toes so often, because we're always wearing shoes. But it's funny to be a beginner again, and it's good to be a beginner again. We don't always have to be knowledgeable and experienced and wise and good at what we're doing.
We don't. And in fact, like in the yoga tradition, that word tapas, of like, I can experience resistance to this and keep going. I can experience struggle or being a beginner again. And that, because sometimes being a beginner again feels to me like a very dense fog. It's like, I can't really see, I don't really know how to get through this. That's not very comfortable as adults. We're used to having a clearer view, but it is so important.
Yeah.
to be able to go through that challenge.
Yeah. So you say tapas is the fire to keep you going through the fog. And I agree with you. I noticed that also. It's that first step. The first step is scary, but also because you're a beginner. I remember becoming a mother. I was very experienced in my yoga practice, but all of a sudden I was a complete beginner at being a mother. And it was just so shocking. You know, you like to be this, what do you call this, advanced person. And all of a sudden you're not. I think that's where I put my control after my eating disorder was in the yoga practice. So yeah, this advanced yogini all of a sudden was a beginner mother. And there was so much to learn as a mother. It's So Keri, can I share your beautiful news that you shared with me in the beginning?
You may, yeah.
Yeah, so Keri's now 6 weeks pregnant. She's a mother of 2 and soon to be 3. And we were just talking about how that is for children and her first child and getting used to the second child coming along. And I would like to discuss this as well for yoga practitioners. Becoming parents can be quite shocking, I think, also because we're so conscious and so aware and we want to do everything right. And
Yeah.
Did you have that experience too?
I did. I feel like the transition into motherhood came relatively smoothly for me. I was fortunate to have the kind of birth that I had hoped for. Breastfeeding went well. So all that was coming along smoothly. And then my son started to he was turning 2. And then the behavioral changes that accommodate a 2 and 3-year-old were really jolting for me. I uncovered anger inside of me I did not know I was capable of or had in me. And that's been such a humbling journey of like, wow, these situations as a parent feel crazy making to me. And how do I regulate myself? And how do I meet? Because now I have 2 children. How do I meet this child who has these needs and needs this kind of help? And wait a minute, my tools aren't working. So like, I got to get new tools.
Yeah, exactly.
And regulate myself in the process. So it's been really humbling getting out. I know a lot of people struggle with the baby stage, and that was not that much for me. But it was when the big feelings started to come out and the lack of cooperation.
Yeah, but also if you think in psychology, the 2-3-year-olds, it's when they start to become autonomous and their confidence, they want to be their own little individual. For me also, it was more the baby thing that was hard. And for me, a lot of grief came up. I realized that for me, as a baby, as an infant, the first few days I'd been put in one of those couveaux, I was put away in a room, and every 3 hours I was breastfed because that was at that time normal. And then when my daughter was crying in the first months or year even, I found it very difficult. And I started to realize it was because of that. I'd never healed that part of me. And so I wanted to speak with my mother about this. Like, this is probably why I find it so difficult to hear my daughter crying, because I haven't worked through that stuff. And she was like, but you didn't cry. Well, I probably did those first 10 days. And then I learned it didn't have an effect. So you stop crying. And we kind of learn that. It's a very strong conditioning to have the first 10 days of your life, that no one's going to listen to your suffering and pain and loneliness. So for me, that was a big realization. Yeah. As a mother.
Yeah. And that's like, to me, like that's a trauma, and being able to name that as trauma for you and your daughter, like to be separated in that way, is traumatic. And those things do have to be integrated when you're ready to integrate them and the situation's right for you to integrate them. And the way that trauma works is it informs how we operate. Until we heal the trauma, and then we can choose a new operating system.
Exactly. Yeah, like your eating disorders. It becomes conscious, and then it can become a choice to a new pathway. Yeah. Yeah.
And even anger, like I think anger as a mother is like, there's a lot of work out there that shows that what brings out our strongest emotions as a parent is linked to a trauma that we experienced as a child.
Yeah,
and how that is this cycle of healing for us as well, not to project that on our children.
No,
to
no.
feel it.
Yeah, to understand which part of this is mine and which is the child's. Yeah.
Yeah.
We've talked about, you've just mentioned self-regulation. So what tools do you use to self-regulate? Do you look at the 5 different bodies, so our 5 koshas, when you think about self-regulation? Yes.
I do, in part. Yeah. I know that the nervous system is one of the huge kind of hacks in a way that I use with myself, is having a pulse on which state my nervous system is in. Mm-hmm. And then applying the tools of yoga or just the other, spiritual and life tools that I have to meet my nervous system where it is right there. So being able to identify and discern, and then know, like, okay, when I'm in a frenetic state and I'm feeling ungrounded, this is what I can do. So some of them, the tools that I use are things like touching my body. Like that is a very quick, easy tool that I will use, is just to ground myself. Another one that I love to use is movement. Movement is life to me. Moving my body, letting things process, like getting the energy stirred. And movement can take so many different forms, like laying on your mat for an hour and exploring what comes up is a very ground soothing form of movement for me. Oh, wow. Or doing like ecstatic dance.
Oh, I've never done ecstatic dance.
There's a
maybe I do it at home. I don't know. What is ecstatic?
I've never done it out. I mean, I've done it in retreats, but ecstatic dance is basically this idea that you just allow the dance to happen through you. It's not structured or
choreographed.
You just flip on. But I found that to be really healing.
Okay. Yes. There we go again. Yeah. I love dance too. And I've just come to realize, because there was a time where I thought, okay, I don't need to do the yoga just for the physical part. But especially in the COVID time, I realized I love the physical aspect of movement. And I love the physical part of yoga. It's so vital to me to keep my physiology in homeostasis. And that helps me keep my mind and psyche in a balanced state too. So it's really, for me, vital.
Absolutely.
And I think for most people.
Yeah, absolutely. And then like your strategy too. Like I love to breathe and meditate before I go to sleep at night. And it's like, I think we all have to find what ways are the best ways for me to regulate myself in this situation or that situation, and then apply them, like actually do the work of applying them, not just know that they're going to be useful, but put in the practice time to do it.
Yeah. Keep experimenting and finding out and being creative with them also.
Yeah, absolutely. Permission to explore.
Yes. And I loved what you said, letting movement stir you from within. It's so important to keep that moving and let things unfold naturally.
Yeah, you said earlier, the more you learn about yoga, the less you realize you know. And I relate to that so much personally. And just in my movement practice as well, the more I think I know about these asanas, or the asana, the more I want to pull back from that and just get out of that identification with what I think of it and just be in it.
Okay. Yeah. Be in the posture, you mean, or just in the movement in the body?
In the movement in the body. I want to get out of this is warrior 2.
Okay.
Check these boxes. I want to come into warrior 2 and just let it be a lived experience right then.
Yeah.
Rather than it being like an anatomy checklist, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that has its function too. Like if you're working with people who have a lot of anxiety, then it's nice for them to have that checklist because they can feel, okay, I'm in a safe space. Oh, this is my hip, there's my knee. You know, it gives them a trigger to feel back to. But yeah, if you're using it just for you to feel good, it's totally different. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So is there something you really want to tell listeners or share with listeners about your work, but also something you feel we haven't touched on yet?
I think we've talked about trauma. That's a really big one that I like to normalize. I think I'd love to just talk a little bit about my work, and then that covers it. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Should I just start right in with that?
For sure.
Okay. So most of my work is one-on-one because I love to build relationships with people. And so I do private sessions with people in person in my studio and online via Zoom. And really the main areas that I focus on are predominantly women. I do work with men as well, but mostly my audience is ladies. And we work with mental wellness. So when I talk about mental health, I don't just mean anxiety, depression, trauma, those things. I also mean like your relationship with your mind and your mindset as part of that. And I work with nervous system regulation, trauma integration, and empowerment. So those are like my favorite areas to focus on, all as it relates to your body. So I went through an experience personally where I had a miscarriage, and I was 15 weeks pregnant, and it was really a traumatic experience. And this course came through me as part of that, because I went through that period of being a beginner again with my body and realizing that even though I had this long-standing healthy relationship with my body, after I experienced that death and that loss, I had a whole new experience with my body at that time. I didn't like that my body reminded me that I was pregnant and I wasn't anymore. It was this like daily wake up and like, oh, my body is not in alignment with where I want to be. So out of that process of learning how to get back in my body and to heal with my body and to love my body and appreciate it again, I came up with this course. It's called Befriend Your Body. And it basically takes people through a strategic 6-week program where they work on getting clear about the beliefs and thoughts they have about their body, their mindset. Then they work on healing and integrating trauma. Then they work on getting into their bodies and seeing what it feels like. And it keeps building on from there to where ultimately at the end, where people are is they have a conscious relationship with their body. They're choosing how they relate to their body. And beautiful. I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, it sounds amazing. And how long do you work each week? Because it sounds quite deep and intense.
It is. I'm kind of known as being deep and intense.
Oh, I'm glad there's another one.
I love to get in there.
Me too. Yeah, it's important.
Really ready to do some healing work, but like you get out what you put in, you will get out tenfold, right? Like when we go in and we heal, there is lightness and spaciousness and freedom on the other side. So people get an email, like our teachable link. And then every week there's about an hour and a half of practices that they'll do. There's movement, there's always meditation, and then there's journaling, and there's some sort of educational component.
Oh, wow. So you work with all the bodies. You work with mind, psych, soul,
energy, all of
it. Body. And is this pre-recorded or you do lives as well?
So this one's pre-recorded. I found that I tried to originally do it as a live program and people were not biting. I think the shame aspect was too great when it came to their body. So I made it to where it's totally self-paced. It's all virtual and anonymous, but people can reach out to me for support. They can share, like at one point in the beginning, you create a mind map of like all the ways you're thinking about your body. And that they can post up so other people can see it, because it is really helpful for us to see like, oh, they're really struggling with accepting this part of their body or whatever it is, and normalize it.
Oh, great. Yeah, it sounds very, very creative, but also very solid. Wonderful.
I wanted it to be really, really structured. It's like robust shifts will happen here.
Yeah. And it's so important to lay the good foundation and build on top of that incrementally.
Well, and I think we can't skip right to, like, in the body acceptance world, people are like, oh, just accept your body. It's like, no, wait, my mindset is in the way. My trauma is in the way. I can't do that sustainably. Like, it won't stick. You can look at yourself in the mirror and say a positive affirmation, but if you haven't changed the root and gotten to the root, that's not going to last.
No. Yeah, wonderful. I love it. Okay. So do you want to leave us with a practice?
Sure. Yeah. I would love to, speaking of the body, to lead a meditation where we come into our bodies.
Okay. I'll mute myself. So you have
okay. I'm going to get a timer. Okay. So take a moment and just settle into a seat and make any adjustments to your body that feel really helpful for you. Take the time to listen to your body and see if it would like you to adjust it in any way or shift or resettle. And then when you're ready, put one hand over your belly and one hand over your chest, and really spread your fingers out, not in a dramatic or forceful way, but just a whole hand, whole finger placement on your chest and your belly. Tune into your breathing as it naturally is, and then inhale through your nose and exhale slowly out through your mouth. And feel free to make a little bit of noise, a sigh, even. Continue like that. Breathe in through your nose, take your time. And then let it pour out of your mouth. Let it be a very long, slow exhale. There's no need to rush. In just a moment, I'm going to have you switch your hands. So the other hand will come to your chest now, the opposite hand down to your belly. And then we're going to alter our breathing. So you're going to breathe in and out through your nose now. And I'm not guiding you to breathe right now because I want you to find your own experience of your breath. And to trust in and have faith in however your body is breathing for you right now. Even if it feels shallow, even if it's hard to pay attention to it, or if you're experiencing long, smooth breaths, be with whatever's there. Keep breathing like this. Bring your hands together and then interlace your fingers. And then you're going to take them and sit them on the crown of your head. So you've got palms down, elbows out wide. And take a series of breaths here. Slow, smooth. And organic. Your breaths are whatever they are right now. Your job is to notice. Bring your awareness into the whole of your body. Maybe the pressure of your hands on your head. The length in your sides. your pelvis, resting down on whatever is supporting your bottom. The front of you, the back of you, and everything in the middle. We tend to pay attention to separate parts. Try to pay attention to it all. Take a few final breaths here. And when you're ready, release your hands down into your lap. Tune into your heart center. Not your heart muscle, the center of your chest and even right beneath it. And then when you're ready, slowly open up your eyes.
Thank you. That was lovely and very calming. Yeah.
I love simple, just letting ourselves tune into our breath and our body can be so powerful, even for just 5 minutes.
Yeah, but also the elbows nice and wide above your head. It's such a heart opener, but at the same time grounded. It's very nice.
Yes, that pressure here. Oh, it feels so good.
Yeah, and you feel the energy move in a different way. It moves up, but it's strong. It's not this spacey upward feeling.
Yeah, it's grounding.
I've never done that.
Awesome. I love that about our career. We get to constantly learn new things.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Oh. So where can people find you? I'll put everything in the show notes, but you can also plug in anything you want people to know about.
Sure. Yeah. So I have a website and it's Keri, Keri Marino, Marino.com. And I'm on Instagram and Facebook at Keri R. Marino. And that's where you can find me. I'm mostly on Instagram though.
Okay. Yeah. I think I'm an older generation, mostly on Facebook. I find Instagram too fast. It's too quick.
It is constantly changing. And it's like, I really tread lightly on that and invest in more simplistic media, to be honest.
Okay. Yeah. I might have to follow you and see how you do that. Yeah. Okay. Wonderful speaking to you. Wonderful getting to know you. Thank you for your wisdom and your work. I'm really happy you're out there. It's good getting to know you.
Thank you. I really appreciate what you're doing and your time. And I look forward to your book too. That sounds amazing. I'm excited about that.
Yeah, I'm getting excited now. There was many moments where I was like, oh my God, what have I started? There are days where you think I'm not going to write this anymore, or who the hell is going to read this?
Yeah, I get that. I'm sure you felt like giving up so many times, and you've also known that you couldn't do that.
No, exactly. Yeah.
Well, and organizing your brain to write a book is a big deal. Like, I see you in that. That takes a lot of commitment to do it. So go you.
Yeah, well, this is the thing. Anger has been the motivator for that. I was so angry about so many things. And then the first draft was just like this big blah, and then you go through it and you revise and you edit and you only get to the very goodness of what you're actually trying to say and how you're trying to change that in the world. And it's become a beautiful process. I saw a post today or yesterday about it's not even what you achieve with the work you do, but it is the process itself and what you learn along the way through that process. That is the biggest gift. And that's so true. I've learned so much about myself and relationships and work and doing. Yeah. So that's been the gift of the journey. Yeah.
Absolutely. I'm sure it's helped you as a yoga therapist too, because it's organized your processes in a way to get down to like the nectar.
Yes. And also the way the chapters are set out. Now, anytime I think, I want to do a program for that, I can use the chapters as the stepping stones, basically. So it's really, very effective. Yeah. So yes, we'll end here. We'll say goodbye to listeners. Bye, everyone. And thanks.
Yes, absolutely. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks.
So thank you, everyone, for staying to the end of the podcast. I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did. I really love doing these talks with these amazing people. And if you want to know more, just take a look in the show notes. There's plenty of links and ways to connect with either the guest or myself. If you want to work with us or find out more about us, just check out the information in the show notes. So I hope you have a wonderful weekend or week, and you'll be hearing from me next week. Bye.